Golden Goat. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Christopher.
Today we're doing our first episode without Don Knotts.
The first, but not the first, because he skips a lot. I feel like if I would know, right? He did like every 4 shows or something.
He didn't do every 4 shows. There were a few periods where he might have done maybe 24 shows a year as opposed to 32.
Barney got
that was about it. It's a lot. It takes a lot of energy to be Barney Fife. It takes a lot of energy to play Barney Fife.
I would imagine so. It's hard to be Chris Cordingley, you know?
I mean, you're already run down. You're exhausted, I imagine.
I am. I'm all ratty. Rode hard and play wet, as my grandmother used to say.
What does that term even mean?
It's about horses.
That's what I thought. I thought it's kind of like you didn't even take the time to groom the horse after you rode the horse into a lather.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's me.
Chris Cordingley rode hard, put up wet. So I don't. Have you gotten your Andy Griffith Show Ambassadors magazine from Randy Turner?
Of course I have. It came in the mail yesterday.
Have you looked at it yet?
No, I was waiting to sit down in front of a hot fire tonight and look at it.
Well, when you do, you can look at this and you can see my article on Jack Dodson and his work with Sam Peckinpah.
Aaron.
Yeah.
You've come a long way from just saying, what was your last quote? It's great.
great. I think great op-ed on Ted Koppel's package. Yeah, I remember Ted Koppel's trip to Mount Airy. Yeah, I just think it was a great culmination after we interviewed the Dodson sisters. I thought I'll write a piece on Sam Peckinpah and do that. Actually, I'll tell you what, that wasn't what started it. I actually had reached out to Randy and said, could I do a piece on Sam Peckinpah and Jack Dodson? And that was how we connected. That was how I found the Dodson sisters.
Oh, excellent. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so when you're sitting in front of your warm fire, I encourage you to read it.
I absolutely will. I always enjoy getting those. So thank you, Randy Turner.
Yes, thank you, Randy. So are you ready to dive in? We're doing Opie and the Carnival today. Let's
do it. Let's get a bullseye.
Yeah, cha-ching. So this episode first aired on April 26, 1965. So Don Knotts is still listed in the credits, even though he's gone. He'll be listed in the credits of the next episode.
An administrative mistake.
It's something. I don't know. Maybe he got paid for these episodes, even though he wasn't in them. I don't know what the story was. But I like this episode. It's a solid episode. Would you say it's a solid episode?
Yeah, it is. But on the credit thing, other episodes that he hasn't been in, they haven't listed him at the beginning.
Are you sure?
Yeah, for sure. I always notice that. I really do. I'm serious. So I think that this might have just been an oversight, or maybe they didn't want to. I don't know.
They may not have made a big to do about it. I mean, they could have kept it quiet until the season ended.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Pay attention on the other when you do your second rewatch podcast listening tour.
I will do that. I will say though, this is like an episode, and we can dive into this further, where you could tell this episode would have gone differently if Barney had been there.
Absolutely. You swap out Andy for Gomer, you had a whole different world.
You mean Barney for Goober?
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. But let's dive in. We open with Andy, Helen, and Opie, as well as Johnny Paul at the carnival. And Opie is trying to save money to buy his dad a birthday present. He's such a good kid.
What a nice, sweet boy.
Yeah. There's a shooting gallery where no one can hit the shots. And the 2 guys running it have bent the side of the gun. And they must have bent it really, really hard, because that is not a hard shot to make. I mean, you could almost just point. You wouldn't. I don't even know if you'd have to aim. I think you could almost just point the gun.
Yeah, I had a similar experience to this. I was at a Shields in Missoula. I paid $5 to try to shoot. It was an air gun, but nothing even came out of the rifle. And so at least they had something that was shooting.
They did. I don't know if today you're allowed to basically roll into a carnival with a 22 and let a 10-year-old take a shot, but that was not the case.
Miracle and wonder.
Yeah, it was back when things were different. Back when things were better in 1965.
Yeah.
So the guys have modified the guns, but they do have one good gun, and they decide they need to let a kid win with the good gun. And so, who do they pick? They pick Opie, and he takes a shot. He's a crack shot, and he comes home with us to show Aunt B his ceramic pelican that he won at the shooting gallery.
Looks really nice. Something
it does look really nice. Now, what if he'd come to you and said, I want to put this on your mantle?
I would have handled it the exact same way Aunt B did. I thought she did this flawlessly. Oh, it's so beautiful. Wouldn't you like it more if it were up in your room?
Yes. I just didn't know if you were going to be like, yes, that thing's classy. Let's put it on the mantle.
No, sometimes I may, your design happiness isn't my design happiness. I'm just happy you're happy.
Yeah.
Get that stuff upstairs.
So she proposes, she shoots down the idea in a very good way. And Opie proposes giving it to his dad. And Aunt B says he should actually find out what his dad wants for his birthday. And so later that night,
a good life skill.
Yeah, I mean, that was before the days of Amazon wish lists. Although I don't know, my dad's doesn't do Amazon wish lists.
My dad's birthday is coming up, so this is a very relevant piece for me. And dads are hard to shop for. So what I'm doing is we're like co-hosting a Scotch party with some of his friends that I feel like it's an experiential gift.
Are you bringing in somebody who can kind of walk you through the scotches?
Absolutely not. But I bought some scotches. We're gonna have fun. I've been helping him, think through the guest list, who to invite. It's a whole. I'm helping him throw himself a birthday party.
I like that idea. My father is one of the hardest people to shop for. It's very, very difficult.
I also think it's important to note, because all my fans out there, if you didn't get invited, it's a very small group. So if you felt slighted, good, but also it's a very small group.
I co-host this podcast with him, and I wasn't even invited.
Yeah.
I mean, really, who wants to go to a Scotch tasting with a bunch of guys who don't know anything about Scotch?
That's better than going to one of the people that know what they're saying.
Yeah. But he's very difficult to shop for. I mean, what I finally ended up getting him, and I think this might work, is 1 year for, I don't know, the bookstore in DC, Politics and Prose.
I do know of it.
Well, they will do a shipping of a book and tailor the picks to an individual. So I got him that, and I was kind of like just kind of gave him a little bit of background on him, and then they contacted him directly. And as far as I know, he's still getting a book as part of a subscription.
That's a good gift. I like that.
Thank you.
Good son.
Thank you. I tried. So later that night, Aunt B and Andy are sitting on the front porch, and he is playing his guitar. And Aunt B says everything is nice and peaceful, and Andy starts barking to get the dogs riled up. And Opie comes out. Aunt B tells him that Opie is going to try to find out what he wants for his birthday. And so he comes out, and he tells him all the stuff that was there at the carnival, and Andy doesn't bite. He asks if there was a genie, if he could wish for anything, what would he wish for? And he says a guitar, which, that's out of Opie's price range.
Yeah, totally.
And so he asks what he would do with a smaller genie lamp. And Andy says he would wish for a basketball, which is obviously not true.
But that's so sweet. I like this idea. Andy just wants to teach his son, and then they could do something together.
I agree. It's very sweet.
Gift idea.
It's a great gift, but he's thinking he doesn't realize he's dealing with somebody as sharp as his son.
That's correct.
Yeah. And so Andy leaves, and Opie says he doesn't think he really wants a basketball. And that's true. And so the next day, Opie and Johnny Paul are on the front porch, and Opie gets the idea of winning the razor at the shooting gallery, which should be very easy given his track record.
You'd think so. I was hoping that they'd bring back Andy's ex-girlfriend that was the sharpshooter.
That would have been awesome if she just showed up out of the blue and just took those guys to school.
Totally.
Yeah. But they go, and Opie takes the rifle, and he doesn't hit anything, and they're both kind of just perplexed as we go to commercial. And they come into Jefted, and Opie asks for an 8-week advancement on his allowance, which is, this is kind of funny, because, I mean, not funny that they're ripping off this kid. We're like, 8 weeks on his allowance. I mean, I'm like, well, if you were really gambling and you got in a bind, you'd probably be asking for 8 weeks or higher on your pay. If you really got into, if you're an adult and you really get into trouble.
That's true.
So Opie lies and he says the brake on his bike is slipping, and Andy just says, tell him to take it to the repairman and he'll pay for it. So no luck there. And then Opie goes to visit Goober and asks if there is anything he can do to make a little extra money. And he tells him about the shooting gallery, and Goober says he can win it for him, which I'm sure he could. I mean, I'm sure Goober's a fine shot.
Yeah, Andy
says he is. So Goober goes to the carnival and he misses, and before we know it, he's gone through a lot of money. And then back at the jail, Andy and Helen are talking about his birthday party, and Goober comes up and tells him he's had issues with shooting at the range. I mean, at the shooting gallery, and he's really confused. He doesn't really know what's going on. He thinks it's his eyes. Andy and Helen tell him it's not his eyes, and then Goober slips and mentions Opie, and it doesn't take much to get Goober to spill the beans. It's kind of like, you push, he's like, no, and you're like, okay, forget it. And he's like, okay, I'll tell you. It's really not very hard.
Everybody on this show.
No one
on this show keeps a good secret. You just have to ask twice.
Yeah, it is really one of these things where they do let it slip, and they just let it, and so he tells him. And so Goober tells Andy the whole story, which is a good thing, because Andy needs to know. And Andy gets off the phone, I think, with kind of the state police, I guess, and he learns that these guys don't have a file. But he comes up with an idea, and he tells Goober to bring Opie by the gallery in about an hour. And I will tell you, what we see here is probably, I don't know. I hate to use the term the most baller moment, because Andy's just kind of, because Andy always does. He does because he always kind of like, he's just kind of sharp, and he kind of figures out what's going on. But this is just, watching him just take these guys down is so fun.
It is fun.
Yeah. And he goes to watch them for a while, he and Helen do, and he figures out that they must not have any good guns, or just one good gun. And he goes to shoot, and he realizes that the sights are just bent a little bit, and all he's got to do is just adjust his aim entirely. And he basically
one big game of Plinko.
Yeah, and he just cleans them out, takes all their stuff, and they decide to close. And that's when Andy flips open his badge. He goes, "Nope, you're staying open." And he lets them know that Opie's coming and that he's their next customer. And then he says, "You're going to let this kid win, and then you're not going to let this kid win. You're going to let this kid play fair and square, and you're going to, and then I'm going to basically tell everybody in the state what a bunch of crooks you guys are. So you better shape up." And then they leave. And Opie shows
Small Business Saturday for Sheriff Taylor.
The funny thing is like, that's not a really lucrative business of saying, yeah, I'm going to go set up in the country where everybody can shoot, and I'm going to do target practicing of with a gun of things 5 feet away, and expect to really make money hand over fist.
Yeah.
They leave, and Opie shows up, and he nails all the shots as Andy and Helen watch. He wins the razor as we go to commercial. This episode was produced by Pod Machine. They do a great podcast at a great rate. I was fortunate to get started on this a few years ago, and I've just been very, very pleased with it ever since. I mean, they will edit your podcast. They will do artwork for your podcast. They'll do the YouTube videos for the podcast, and they have a very quick turnaround time once you upload all your material. So I highly recommend it.
I'm pro pod in general. I love bean pods. I like pod hotels. I like pod apples, maybe. But you know what pods I like best? Pod machines.
Pod machines. Me too.
I like them better than podcasts. I honestly don't even really like podcasts that much. So I'm just thankful that you're here.
Why do you do this podcast?
To see your dimples, baby.
To see my dimples. Well, and if you really push hard, my Pod Machine might be able to give you some dimples. I don't know. So go to podmachine.com to learn more and enter Loaded Goat at checkout for a 10% discount.
And that's spelled just like Loaded Goat.
And in the epilogue, Andy is opening his presents, and he gets a shirt from Aunt B and says, "I'll have to get a suit to go with this." And then he opens Opie's present, and it's an electric razor. and he tells him he won it at the shooting gallery, and the whole story about what happened even that terrible second day. And he said he figures out what happened the second time. He must have been nervous. Little does he know.
The yips.
He had the yips. And that's how he
It's just sweet. I like all of this.
Yeah.
It's a good Opie episode.
It's a good Opie episode. And it really is one where if Barney was like here, it would have almost, I think it would have made this episode worse. And I'm not saying good riddance, Don Knotts. I'm just saying this is one where that's what you're hearing me say?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you think Aunt B fans are militant. Barney Fife fans, they're like straight off of 4chan. They will take you down.
Oh, good.
I kid. But no, I think it would have set a different tone. And I did kind of think, one thing I do think is, even with the quality of some of these shows dropping without Don Knotts, it is kind of interesting at certain points to see some of these characters branch out and go in different directions.
Yeah, I agree.
It's kind of like with the Fun Girls. Like you said, the Fun Girls, they basically cause everybody to revert to the same goofiest version of themselves. I mean, I felt like this was actually, I mean, Andy's taken down a lot of folks, but this was just kind of one of the coolest ways.
Well, he has fun with it too. You never get to see him have fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many whistles would you give this?
I'd give this one a 9er.
I'd go 8, but yeah, I think it's a really good
episode.
Yeah.
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 Is it rare that we would get an Opie episode right before the end of the season?
I don't know. I mean, so the next one that we're doing is Banjo Playing Deputy, which is where Jerry Van Dyke, who was Dick Van Dyke's brother, he has since passed. It's clear he's auditioning to play the new deputy. And Randy Turner was telling me it's an often discussed rumor that was actually what Don Rickles was doing to when he was on The Luck of Newton Monroe, was he was potentially going to play they were auditioning for the replacement. They're going to try a guy named Jack Dodd in season 6, and he's basically given a no win proposition. It's almost like they just dusted off some old Barney scripts and plug him in, and it just doesn't work well. And that's basically it. So I don't know. I mean, but I guess it did feel, they've had 2 Opie-centric episodes back to back. The one thing I will say is when these color episodes start happening, you do see a lot more Opie-centric episodes taking place, because Ron Howard's a little older. He's dealing with, he's the issues of being a teenager. And so it is a little more, you will see a lot more of his of Opie-centric stories. They're nowhere near as cute because there's it's he's a teenager. He's a teenager. It's teenagers are not cute.
Mm-hmm. But then we eventually get into Happy Days and things get good again.
Things get good again, and before you know it, he's directing, and here we are.
War of the Worlds.
He didn't direct War of the Worlds. That was Spielberg.
He did something though. What's a movie he's done?
And he's done a bunch. He did A Beautiful Mind. He did Cocoon. He did Willow. Have you seen any of those?
No.
Have you seen the Han Solo movie?
No.
Have you seen Parenthood with Steve Martin?
Nope.
Have you seen Far and Away with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman?
Nope.
I'm like, have you seen Apollo?
A lot of them.
Have you seen Apollo 13?
Yeah, good movie.
That's a good movie.
Nice job, Ron.
Have you seen Splash with Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah?
No.
I can name some more, but this
I'm not a Hanks head.
You're not much of a. Sounds like you don't do much except watch YouTube.
I don't even have an account. Oh, that was fun though. I enjoyed that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks. Like that was tough. Have you maybe do you have any final thoughts?
No. Good episode. I like the Carnival situation. I like that they figured out a way to beat the hustle the hustlers. Always going to be a win in my book. So thanks, team.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. And if you think about it, subscribe. Next week, we'll wind down season 5 and go and take a break. But before we do that, we'll review Banjo Playing Deputy. Until then, Christopher. Till then, Christopher, can I have an 8-week advance on my salary?
Yeah, I'll Venmo you now.